I was halfway through the jet bridge when a flight attendant stepped into my path. She had that tight, polite smile that airline staff wear when they're about to tell you your seat's been double booked or your bag is too big to carry on. "Miss Dane?" she asked, holding a tablet in front of her chest like a shield. I nodded. "Yeah, that's me." She glanced at the screen, blinked, then stared again. The color drained from her face. Her smile vanished. "You were on this flight 10 years ago." At first, I thought she was confused. I laughed a little, trying to be kind. Maybe I travel a lot. Can't remember every trip. She didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. Her eyes locked onto mine. "You never got off." That's when I stopped smiling. She turned the tablet around and showed me the passenger list. My name was right there. Elira Dane, Flight 414 to Denver. The year said 2015. Next to my name in bold red text was a single word, missing. And just like that, my legs felt unsteady. My hands went cold. I stared at that screen, trying to make sense of it. A glitch? A mistake? Someone with the same name? But deep down, a part of me already knew. I had been on this flight. And something about that trip had never felt right. Something inside me whispered, this wasn't a mistake. This was a warning. And I hadn't even boarded yet. I was tired before I even got to the airport. 2 weeks in Portland had taken more out of me than I expected. It wasn't the city, it was my dad. Marlon Dane used to be larger than life. Navy mechanic for 20 years. Always fixing things, always moving, always knowing what to do. Now he stood in front of his microwave, unsure how to set the timer for soup. He looked smaller. His hands trembled when he thought no one was watching. And sometimes, when I walked into the room, he'd squint at me like I was a stranger. That scared me more than anything else. I flew out to see him after my sister Junie called and said his memory was slipping faster. "It's not just the keys anymore," she said. "He forgot how to drive to the grocery store. He didn't even recognize Kaya in the Christmas pictures." Kaya is my daughter. She's 10, bright, funny, always humming something under her breath. I've raised her on my own since she was 2. I never wanted her to feel what I felt growing up, alone in the room even when people were around. But life has its way of making echoes louder over time. My mom died when I was 24, and I never really talked about it. I stayed busy instead, moved to Colorado, started writing freelance travel pieces, kept moving, and now I was flying home from Portland with a bag full of laundry and a head full of memories I didn't want. I was trying not to cry in the security line. Kaya was back in Denver with Junie while I made the trip. Junie had offered, of course. "Let her stay here. It's too heavy for her," she said. She wasn't wrong. I just hated that she had to be right. My flight was delayed, of course. Rain streaked down the glass windows, turning the tarmac into a blur of red lights and wingtips. I stood by the gate, scrolling through photos on my phone. One of Kaya holding up a hand-drawn birthday card for me. One of my dad and me fishing 5 years ago. He had his arm around me, grinning. His face looked clearer back then. The spark in his eyes was still there. When they called my group to board, I slid my phone into my jacket pocket and grabbed my bag. Just another airport. Just another flight. I wanted nothing more than to land, get in my car, and drive straight home. I wanted to hug Kaya and sleep in my own bed and forget the way my dad looked at me like I was someone else. That's what I was thinking as I stepped onto the jet bridge. That's where I was emotionally, drained, detached, in that fog where everything feels distant but heavy. My feet moved, but my mind was somewhere behind me. And then the flight attendant stopped me. But before that, before her words froze the air in my lungs, I remember catching my reflection in the window beside the jet bridge. My hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, circles under my eyes. That blank look people get when they've run out of space to store emotion. I didn't look like myself. I looked like someone caught between two places. There's something airports do to your sense of time. Everything's measured in gates, departures, arrival boards that click like clocks. But the air feels stale, artificial, like nothing real can happen there. I've always found them strange, like you're suspended between stories, waiting for your life to resume. But for me, that morning, the story didn't pick up where it left off. It twisted. As I stood there, bag in hand, still thinking about soup timers and fishing trips and bedtime phone calls I missed with Kaya. I had no idea I was walking straight into something I didn't even remember being part of. I remember the man behind me sighing impatiently as I paused. I remember the woman a few steps ahead of me pulling her carry-on with that soft plastic rumble. I remember how cold the air felt, like the AC was turned up too high. But mostly, I remember that I didn't want to board the plane. Not really. Not for any clear reason. Just a feeling. A pull in my gut, like gravity had shifted slightly sideways. Sometimes we ignore those small alarms. We tell ourselves we're just tired, or stressed, or being dramatic. But deep down, something inside us knows when the story we're in is about to change. I wish I'd listened to that feeling. I wish I'd turned around. Instead, I tightened my grip on my bag, squared my shoulders, and stepped forward toward the flight attendant. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to be told something impossible. Something no one should ever hear before takeoff. And the strangest part? Once she said it, I believed her. She stood in front of me, holding her tablet like she wasn't sure what to do with it. Her eyes didn't move. Her lips were pressed in a tight line. I'd seen nervous airline staff before, but this was different. This was fear. "You were on this flight 10 years ago," she said again, her voice quieter the second time. I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. "What?" She hesitated. Her eyes scanned my face like she was waiting for me to recognize something. "Flight 414, Denver. 10 years ago, this week. You were a passenger." I felt a weird tightness in my chest, like my body was reacting before my mind could catch up. I tried to smile it off. Maybe, I travel a lot. I don't remember every flight. The flight attendant didn't smile back. She held out the tablet. "Can I show you something?" I nodded. She turned the screen toward me. It displayed an old manifest. Flight 414 from Portland to Denver, March 23, 2015. My name was there. Elira Dane, seat 14A. And next to it, in all caps, red text, "Missing." At first I thought it was a joke, some kind of glitch in the system, but she wasn't laughing. I looked back at the manifest. There were dozens of names. Most were labeled "Arrived." A few were blank. Only one was marked "Missing." Me. I handed the tablet back, slowly. "Where did you get that?" "It's archived in our system," she said. "We had an incident on that flight. Most people don't remember anything unusual, but 2 passengers filed reports about someone who boarded and never disembarked. Your name came up when I scanned your ticket." I shook my head. "That's not possible. I don't even remember being on that flight." "Are you sure?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. I suddenly wasn't so sure. A vague memory stirred in the back of my mind. A gray morning. A crying baby in the row behind me. A headache that wouldn't go away. I remembered buckling my seatbelt, looking out the window, watching the rain blur the wing. But nothing after that. No landing. No airport terminal. No rental car counter. Just silence. Then static. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my calendar from 2015. March was mostly blank. One appointment stood out, a doctor's visit for Kaya. But the date was wrong. It was listed twice, once on March 19th and again on March 26th. No mention of travel, no flight receipt, no emails. It was like the trip never happened. I called Junie. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, you boarding? Do you remember if I flew into Denver from Portland in March 2015? There was a pause. "That's really specific. Why? Do you remember me coming back? Anything weird?" You came back, right? You were exhausted. Said you needed to sleep for 2 days straight. Why are you asking this?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I ended the call and stared out the jet bridge window. My reflection in the glass looked pale, unsteady. The flight attendant was still there. "You can still board, but I thought you should know." "What happened on that flight?" She shook her head. "They sealed the reports, just internal documentation. The airline doesn't talk about it. I probably shouldn't have said anything." "But you did. Because I saw your name and I recognized it. I've seen your file before. You were listed as unresolved. That doesn't just happen." I looked past her toward the open cabin door. Passengers were still boarding, pulling their carry-ons down the aisle, chatting with each other like nothing was wrong, as if everything was normal. But it wasn't. I stepped aside and let the line move past me. My bag felt heavier. My hands were sweating. I considered walking away, calling an Uber, forgetting this ever happened. But something pulled at me. A cold, sharp thread that wrapped around my ribs and tugged me forward. I needed to know. I needed to remember. "Can I still take my seat?" I asked. She nodded once. "It's 14A window." I walked down the jet bridge. Each step felt uncertain, like the ground might give out beneath me. I entered the cabin and took a breath, expecting the usual tight quarters and recycled air. But the second I stepped inside, a wave of familiarity hit me, the exact shade of the carpet, the faint, citrusy cleaning spray, the torn corner of the safety card in the seat back. All of it matched something buried in my memory. I didn't feel like I was on a plane. I felt like I was walking into a preserved moment in time. I found my seat and sat down slowly. My body fit the curve of the chair like it had been molded around me. My hands gripped the armrests. I looked out the window at the runway and tried to push the rising panic down into my chest. Someone sat down beside me. I turned to glance. He looked to be in his 50s, calm, quiet. His expression was unreadable. He didn't smile. He just said one thing. "I remember you." I stared at him. "From the gate? From this flight, 10 years ago." I didn't respond. I just turned back to the window and tried to breathe through the sudden pounding in my ears. Something was wrong with this flight. Something had always been wrong, and I was back on it. The man beside me didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. His words echoed in my chest. "I remember you. From this flight. 10 years ago." I kept my eyes on the window, but the view was a blur. My mind was too loud. I ran through every possible explanation, mistaken identity, coincidence, stress playing tricks on me. But none of it felt right. The seat, the air, the silence between announcements, it all carried the weight of something unfinished. I finally turned to him. "Do you remember what happened?" He looked at me carefully. His face was calm, but there was a sadness in his eyes. Not all of it, just pieces, enough to know something didn't add up, enough to know you were there, and then you weren't. "What does that mean?" "You boarded the plane. I remember you sitting by the window looking out the whole time. But when we landed, you weren't there anymore." I frowned. "That's not possible. I must have gotten off. I'm here." He shook his head slowly. "That's the part I can't explain." I wanted to press him for more, but the announcement came over the speaker. Flight attendants began their safety demonstration. Their voices were soft, almost mechanical, like they were reading from a script no one had updated in years. It all felt too familiar. Not just in a "this is how every flight sounds" way. It felt like I'd heard these exact words in this exact order before. I opened my bag and pulled out my notebook. I flipped to the back pages where I sometimes scribbled travel notes. I stared at the margins. There, in faded ink, was a sentence I don't remember writing. "Flight 414, rain, March 2015, never got off." My stomach flipped. I ran my thumb over the ink. It was mine. I wrote it, my handwriting, my pen, but I had no memory of ever writing those words. The man beside me glanced at the notebook. "You've been here before. You feel it, don't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My hands were shaking. When the plane began to taxi, I felt the pressure behind my eyes. My thoughts were racing. I needed to make a decision. Get off now. That was the logical move. Push the call button, make up a reason, get off the flight. Walk back into the airport, file a report, call someone who could explain this. But I didn't. I didn't even move. Something stronger than fear held me in that seat. I needed answers. If this flight was the center of whatever was wrong, then getting off would leave the questions unanswered. I couldn't live another 10 years with this shadow hanging over my life, with pieces missing and memories that didn't line up. So I stayed. The plane lifted off. As the city fell away beneath us, a strange calm settled over the cabin. No crying babies, no coughing, no conversations, just the hum of the engines and the soft sound of pages turning somewhere behind me. I turned to the man beside me again. "What's your name?" Edric Vale." "You've flown this route before?" "Only once. Same flight. Same seat." "And you remember me?" He nodded. "You were crying. The whole flight. I thought you were grieving. Maybe that's why you stayed." "Stayed where?" He exhaled through his nose, like he was choosing his words carefully. "Some people don't finish their journey. They get stuck in the in-between. This flight, it's like a loop for them. A limbo." I wanted to argue, to say that was ridiculous, but a deep part of me was listening, not with logic, but with recognition. What happens to them? Most people don't notice. They walk off the plane, go on with their lives, forget. But if something anchors you here, grief, trauma, fear, it holds on. The rest of the world keeps moving. You keep replaying. It sounded like nonsense, and yet it explained more than anything else had. I looked down at my notebook again. The scribble at the bottom wasn't the only one. There were other notes, sketches of seat maps, names I didn't recognize, scribbled numbers. I had written about this flight before, over and over, and yet I had no conscious memory of doing it. I leaned back in my seat and stared at the ceiling panel above. The overhead light flickered once, just for a second. No one else seemed to notice. "Why now?" I asked. "Why remember it now?" Edric turned slightly toward me. "Because you're ready to face it." The words hit something raw in me. I thought about my dad's vacant expression, Kaya's drawings in my suitcase, the way I had drifted through the past few years with my heart in a box I didn't open. I had carried grief like luggage I refused to unpack. Maybe I'd never really come home from that flight. I closed the notebook. I steadied my breath. I made my choice. I was going to see this through, not run from it, not explain it away. I was going to remember what I had forgotten, and I wasn't leaving this plane until I did. Whatever this was, it started in seat 14A, and now I was going to finish it. The plane flew steady at cruising altitude, but everything inside me felt unsettled. My hands rested on the tray table, fingers curled into fists without meaning to. My heart beat faster with every minute that passed, though I couldn't say why. The cabin was quiet, too quiet. A thick, unnatural stillness hung in the air, like time itself was watching. The flight attendants didn't pass through the aisle again. There were no beverage carts. No one asked about peanuts or pretzels. No one was talking. I turned to look behind me just once. A full cabin, but no one moved. Dozens of passengers sitting upright, all silent, staring forward. Not asleep, not awake. Just there. It felt wrong. I faced forward again. Edric hadn't moved. He stared straight ahead, hands folded in his lap, calm, waiting. I opened my notebook and flipped through the last few pages. I found more lines, more scrawls. My own handwriting, but none of it familiar. "You were grieving. You never got off. Find the picture." I didn't remember writing any of it, but one phrase pulled me in like gravity. "Find the picture." I opened the zipped front pocket of my bag. At the bottom, tucked between a charger and an old boarding pass, was a folded photograph. My heart stalled when I saw it. My fingers trembled as I pulled it free. It was a photo of me, my mother, and Kaya. We were sitting on a blanket in a park. Kaya was about 1 year old. My mom had her arms around both of us. We looked happy, but something was wrong. The image had a faded, water-damaged corner, and across the bottom edge, someone, me, had written a date. March 23rd, 2015. I stared at the photo, trying to remember that day. Nothing came, just fragments. The warmth of sun on my arms, the smell of cut grass, my mother's voice, faint, saying something I couldn't hear. Then a sudden jolt shook the plane. It wasn't turbulence. It felt like the plane hit a wall of pressure. The cabin lights flickered, then dimmed. A low humming started, deep and slow, rising from the floor like a vibration. I looked around. No one reacted. Everyone stayed seated, no panic, no movement. The seatbelt sign dinged overhead, but the sound was distorted, slowed down. Wrong. I looked at Edric. He didn't move. He just whispered, "It's starting again." What's starting? The loop, the memory. It wants to keep you here. The photo in my hand grew hot. I looked down and saw the edges curling inward, like it was being pulled apart from the inside. The ink on the date smudged and faded into the paper. I clutched it tight. Number not this time. The humming grew louder. The walls of the cabin seemed to blur. I looked out the window, but the clouds outside were still, frozen, not moving at all. Then the overhead lights shut off. The emergency strips along the floor lit up in cold blue. The plane wasn't descending. It wasn't turning. It wasn't doing anything. It was just stuck. I stood up. No one else did. I moved into the aisle and turned to face the rows of passengers. Their faces were blank, eyes open, unmoving, like mannequins dressed in human skin. I shouted. Nothing changed. I shouted louder. Then, at the back of the plane, I saw her. A woman stood just outside the galley, neat uniform, dark red lipstick, flight attendant pin. It was her, the one who stopped me at the gate, Mira. But she looked different now, older, tired. Her shoulders were heavy, her eyes hollow. She raised one hand slowly and pointed to the rear lavatory door. It was open just a crack. I moved past the rows of seated passengers. My shoes echoed on the floor. As I approached, the light above the door flickered. I pushed it open. Inside was not a bathroom. It was a room, my childhood bedroom. Pink wallpaper, a twin bed with a stuffed bear, my old desk, a framed picture of my mom. I stepped inside and the door shut behind me. I turned slowly. In the corner sat a little girl. She looked up, 10 years old, maybe younger, brown curls, green eyes. My daughter, but not Kaya. Me. The girl was me. She looked scared, alone. She held the same photo I found in my bag. "Why did you leave?" she asked. Tears burned at the back of my throat. I didn't mean to. I forgot how to come back. "You were sad," she said. "You let go of everything except this. You stayed here." I knelt in front of her. "I'm ready now. I want to go home." She held the photo out to me. "Then take it, but remember her." I took the photo and held it to my chest. The light in the room grew brighter, filling every corner. The wallpaper peeled away, the bed vanished, the desk dissolved, and the door opened behind me. I walked through. I was back in seat 14A. The plane was landing. Passengers were talking. A child cried 2 rows ahead. A flight attendant smiled and asked if I wanted water. Everything was normal. I looked beside me. Edric was gone. I reached into my bag and pulled out the photo again. The ink was clear. The date was sharp. March 23rd, 2015. And in the bottom right corner, in handwriting I finally remembered writing, were 2 words. I'm home. The wheels hit the tarmac with a soft thud, and the plane rolled steadily toward the gate. I didn't move at first. My seatbelt was still buckled. My hands rested in my lap, holding the photo gently like it might vanish if I let go. The sun poured through the window, casting long, golden stripes across my tray table. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt the same. Passengers began standing, stretching, pulling bags from the overhead bins. Voices rose, small talk returned. The world had started moving again. I stayed seated, breathing in the rhythm of reality. The moment had passed, but its imprint remained. My mind was clear. My heart felt steady, but raw. The strange fog that had followed me for years was gone. The dull weight in my chest had lifted. For the first time in a long time, I felt awake. A flight attendant walked past and smiled at me. Not Mira, a different woman. She glanced at the photo in my hand and nodded politely before moving on. I stood and gathered my things. I checked my phone. Dozens of messages and missed calls. One from Junie. "Kaya's making you a welcome home cake. Hurry back." I smiled and wiped my eyes. As I walked off the plane, I kept waiting for something to pull me back, some unseen thread to remind me I didn't belong in the present. But nothing came. My feet hit solid ground. The gate felt bright, alive. The airport was loud and ordinary. People rushed past, phones to their ears, children clinging to parents, airport workers calling out instructions. I was back, fully back. I walked through the terminal with purpose. No hesitation, no confusion. Each step felt earned. I was no longer retracing old paths. I was moving forward. I called Junie. She picked up quickly. "Elira, you okay?" "I'm home." "You sound different." "I am." I didn't explain further. She didn't ask. She just told me Kaya had made chocolate frosting from scratch and was wearing my sweatshirt because it smelled like me. I laughed. It felt good to laugh. Not like a mask, but like a release. I passed by a large window overlooking the runway. A plane took off in the distance. I watched it disappear into the clouds, and for a moment, I thought of the others. Those who stayed behind. Faces frozen in time. Stories unfinished. Maybe they were still searching. Maybe they hadn't made their choice yet. Maybe they would. But I had. That night, Kaya curled up next to me on the couch and asked why I was so quiet. I kissed the top of her head. "I just missed you." She nodded like she understood more than a 10-year-old should. She didn't press. Later, after she fell asleep, I pulled the photo from my bag again. The image had changed in one small way. It was clearer, brighter. Like the light inside it had returned. My mother's face looked peaceful. My arms around Kaya were firm, present. The moment captured in the picture no longer felt like a ghost of something lost. It felt like a part of me had returned to it and come out whole. I placed the photo in a new frame and set it on my nightstand. Every morning after that, I looked at it before anything else. A reminder not of the past, but of how far I had come. Grief doesn't disappear. It doesn't ask for permission. It lingers, waiting in the quiet moments. But if you face it, if you let yourself feel all of it, there's something on the other side. Clarity, peace, life again. I lost time, I lost myself, but I came back. And this time, I wasn't missing anymore. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something, share it. Someone out there might need to hear it. Leave a comment and tell me what part hit you the hardest. I read them all, and your stories matter just as much as mine. If you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got more true stories, strange moments, and unforgettable journeys coming your way. Thanks for watching, and remember, some flights change your destination, others change you. See you in the next one.